If you had looked out into the Tobruk harbour on the morning of the 22nd of January 1941, your gaze would have undoubtedly been drawn to the beached and burning wreck of the armoured cruiser San Giorgio. The first of her name and class, she had been conceived in 1904, laid down the following year, and completed in 1910. Now, 30 years later, she sat crippled, not by enemy gunfire, but scuttled by her own crew. Upon her launch 3 decades earlier, she was already entering the twilight years of her relevance. With the development of the fast and heavily armed battlecruiser class, their role as independent gladiators capable of operating against all sorts of battleships was coming to an end. However, as during any transitionary period, their fade into obscurity was measured not by their capabilities, but the speed at which they could be replaced. As such, the San Giorgio served in the Italo-Turkish War of 1911, the First World War, and World War II, living on far past the lifespan of most armoured cruisers in any other country's employ. Displacing over 10,000 tons with a maximum speed of 23.2 knots, her main armament comprised 4 254mm heavy batteries, alongside 8 190mm and 18 76mm guns. Her belt armour came in at 200mm, while her deck sported a mere 50mm worth of protection. After a storied career, including 2 major wars, not the least of which being the deadliest in history, the fate of the San Giorgio was likely to be that of the scrappers yards. In 1931, her sister ship, the San Marco, was converted into a radio-controlled target vessel, and it would not have been surprising if the San Giorgio had followed suit. Instead, the Regia Marina foresaw a different fate for the older sibling. Between 1937 and 1938, she underwent a significant refit and conversion to a large port defence monitor. 6 of the 14 boilers were removed, and the remaining 8 were converted from coal to oil. This had the effect of cutting her maximum speed to 18 knots, which was of little consequence given her new, mostly static role. 2 funnels were disposed of, alongside all the original armament, short of the 254mm and 190mm guns. In their place was installed 4 twin turrets sporting 100mm dual-purpose guns. For dedicated air defence, she was then outfitted with 6 37mm AA cannons, a dozen 20mm autocannons in 6 twin mounts, and 4 13.2mm heavy machine guns in 2 twin mounts. Following this extensive remodelling, the San Giorgio served as a training vessel until the beginning of World War II, when she was deployed to the defence of Tobruk in May of 1940. Her deck was reinforced with sandbags to offset her relative weakness against air attack, and her captain, Rosario Viola, ordered the setting of a triple layer of torpedo netting around the ship. This would prove fortuitous only a month later. On the 12th of June, 2 British light cruisers, HMS Gloucester and HMS Liverpool, engaged the San Giorgio at long range. After an indecisive artillery duel, the attackers withdrew, until 7 days later, on the 19th, another attempt was made on the aging warship's life. The submarine HMS Parthia fired 2 torpedoes, which were successfully dealt with by Captain Viola's defensive preparations. Her assailant, however, escaped unmolested, leaving the British submarine to withdraw and sink the Italian submarine Diamante the next day. On the 28th of June, the San Giorgio's gunners spied 2 incoming SM-79 Sparvieros, and having recently endured the ministrations of RAF bombers, mistook them for the enemy. In a hail of anti-aircraft fire, one of the planes was hit, killing all aboard. It was quickly learned, however, that one of the passengers had been none other than the Governor-General of Libya, Italo Balbo. The architect of the Regia Aeronautica and potential political threat to Mussolini, it was long thought afterwards that the Duce may have had a hand in the governor's fate. This has since been largely debunked, with no evidence corroborating Mussolini's complicity being unearthed, and those on the ground citing it was impossible to identify the plane's markings coming in against the sun as the pair were. Regardless of the intent, Captain Viola was replaced by Captain Stefano Pugliese, who served as San Giorgio's commanding officer until her demise. San Giorgio defended the ports for the rest of 1940, and most of January 1941, over 115 engagements, claiming 47 aircraft damaged or shot down. She was powerless to affect the unfolding military disaster in the Western Desert, however, where Marshal Rodolfo Graziani's offensive into Egypt had been turned on its head. From the 8th of December onwards, Britain's counter-offensive, codenamed Operation Compass, pushed back and routed the invading Italians in a rapid advance which took even themselves by surprise. On the 6th of January, Allied forces reached Tobruk, and by the 9th the port city was surrounded. Rather than withdraw, the San Giorgio was ordered to remain and support the now besieged Italian units as seaborne artillery. Escape went from unlikely to impossible from the 17th onwards, with the deployment of the gun monitor HMS Terror, her 380mm main guns, and attached screening force. As the noose steadily tightened about Tobruk, the San Giorgio was continually harassed by the planes of the RAF, while also trying to lend fire support to the beleaguered defenders. By the 21st, it was clear the Italian position had become untenable, as the Allied forces penetrated the perimeter and advanced on the outskirts of the town. Briefly halted by gunfire from San Giorgio, the order to scuttle the ship came in the early hours of the next day, as enemy fire from the shoreline steadily increased. With this directive from Admiral Viatina, commander of the naval garrison, Captain Pugliese gave the order to abandon ship and destroy anything of value to the British. Once the crew were safely ashore, he and a handful of the ship's officers and NCOs rigged the vessel's magazines and made their escape. At 4:15, these detonated, killing 2 of the saboteurs who are assumed to have been the victims of a temperamental fuse. At dawn, Major General Della Mura of the Surt Division formally surrendered, and alongside his men went 700 of the armoured cruiser's complement into captivity. A few, however, made their escape via fishing boat, making it back to Italy some days later. In honour of their tenacious resistance, the ship and crew were awarded the Gold Medal for military valour, Italy's highest honour for military bravery. As for the San Giorgio herself, she eventually found the burial at sea she deserved. Bought by the Italian government, in 1952 she was refloated and hauled out into the Mediterranean. Rough conditions broke the towing cables binding her to the tug, and after taking on too much water, she went down for the last time.